Hello everyone, it's True Celebrity Stories here again, and as usual, we will be giving you some inside details, some never heard before information about some of your biggest celebrities. So, sit tight and watch what we have for you today. In today's episode, we will give you all the gist, the truth surrounding Biggie's death in 1997. Sit tight, subscribe, and click on the notification icon so you get beeps on any new videos we post to the channel. So, let's get started, shall we? The East Coast-West Coast rivalry at the time. Hip-hop, and in contemporary times, was always synonymous with violence. The gang wars, the drive-by shootings, the peddling of drugs, and everything was attributed to surviving the hostile circumstances life has created. In the popular rap lyrics, you could hear everything, and all the nuances which portrayed the use of guns, the issue of death, drugs, women, and everything in between. In recent times, it might seem like this has dwindled amongst the high drive of the Black Lives Matter movement, but do not kid yourself. The rivalry continues to this very day. When it comes to how the lives of two individuals who have substantial stakes to being called the greatest rapper alive turned out, you might have to give this serious consideration. Tupac and the Notorious Big died within 6 months of each other, and as publicized as their death was, their murders remained unsolved to this very day. They were two icons whose connection and influence on hip-hop continue to be a major bone of contention, even 2 decades after their death. Away from it all, it is good to note that the East Coast-West Coast beef is still very much alive. There has always been a resentment between individuals on each side of the divide, and this beef has centered around media coverage, record labels, and, as expected, gang culture. At that time on the West Coast, the main reason for this resentment was the resistance of DJs and artists from New York to West Coast music. On the other side, artists from the East Coast felt like since they were from New York, the birthplace of pop culture, they deserved more media coverage and attention than artists from the West Coast. From this stance, Biggie and Pac were already pitted against each other. It was like fate had a cruel card to play against these two. Biggie and Pac's friendship. It is rare to write about Biggie's music, artistic sense, and influence on hip-hop without mentioning Tupac. Sources say that at some point, they were friends before all the beefs and clapbacks started. They had mutual respect and pushed on expanding the frontiers of rap music. The story had it that Pac at some point offered Biggie a bottle of Hennessy as a gift, and sometimes Biggie would crash on his Tupac's couch, and Tupac too would stop by Biggie's hood in California. They would later be pitted against each other as the popularity of their genre increased. The brains behind West Coast Death Row Records, Dr. Dre and Suge Knight, and East Coast Bad Boy Entertainment, the legendary Sean Diddy, helped fuel this competition. This was better outlined after Biggie's demo track found its way to Source magazine. His young talent was spotted, and shortly, his first single, Party and Bullshit, came out in 1993. At this point, it was like fate would be pitting them against each other. No matter the decision they took, their artistry was dedicated to exposing society's ills, the tribulations of life, and the racial divide issues that have plagued American society for long. The major difference between Tupac and Biggie was that they represented different coasts, culminating in one of the biggest rivalries of the time. Biggie's death. On that fateful day of March 9, Christopher Wallace, aka Biggie Smalls, was shot to death at a traffic stop in Wilshire Boulevard and South Fairfax Avenue, Los Angeles. Only if he knew that would be his last day. Maybe he would have made more preparations or steadied himself in a way. His death was to come just 6 months after Tupac, who was also killed in a similar shooting in Las Vegas. Biggie was said to have been shot after leaving that year's Soul Train Music Awards in Los Angeles. He was 24 years as at the time of his death, and he was said to be sitting in his GMC Suburban vehicle when 4 9mm bullets were fired from a black Chevy Impala, which pulled up beside him. Biggie was the most prominent son of the famed gangster rap. His Ready to Die record, which he released in 1994, was sold in millions, and in that same year, Pac, also a leading West Coast rapper, was shot severely in a robbery, and he believed Wallace must have instituted this attack. This would later be a major issue in the build-up to the death of both Pac and Biggie. Biggie's feud with Tupac. When you look at the short lives of Biggie Smalls and Tupac Shakur, looking at the big picture, you see two people who were victims of their circumstances. They started out being friends, but they had to prove their allegiances to their different sides. And later, the feelings of betrayal were said to be the cause of the break-in of their relationship. The two were such good friends that Biggie asked Pac to become his manager. A request Pac was said to have rejected, telling him, "Stay with Puff, he is going to make you a star." The greatness of the two was undisputed, and they even freestyled together at events together. The Budweiser Superfest at New York City's Madison Square was an example. As typical with what would usually happen between two friends, there were small kerfuffles between them, but the fact they belonged to different sides of a divide was going to play a big part. Tupac was signed to Death Row Records owned by Suge Knight and Dr. Dre, while Biggie was signed to Sean Puff Diddy Combs, East Coast Bad Boy Records. By these moves, the East Coast-West Coast rivalry would rear its head again. Tupac's move to be signed to Death Row Records was later after a major incident he felt Biggie knew of, 1994, in what was a robbery attack. Biggie and Pac were billed to work on a project with another rapper, Little Sean. Pac arrived at the Times Square Quad recording studio, and when he was preparing to head upstairs to where Biggie and Diddy were, he was shot in the lobby about 5 times. He would later survive the attack and even make it upstairs, where according to him, he saw both Biggie and Combs surprised and acting guilty. Combs would later deny this, saying they showed Pac nothing but pure love and concern. Tupac believed Biggie had something to do with this shooting. It was as if this was confirmed by Suge Knight when he visited Tupac when he was incarcerated for another incident and convinced him to join his Death Row record label. Tupac joining Death Row cemented this new rivalry, although there was never proof if Combs or Biggie knew about the early shooting incident. Biggie would not help matters when he released a track titled Who Shot Ya?, a song which Tupac immediately responded to by releasing Hit 'Em Up in this track. Pac let it slip that he slept with Biggie's wife at the time, Faith Evans. The two continued to trade shots till the end of their short lives. Controversy surrounding Biggie's death. According to the FBI, the death of the East Coast frontman has basically turned to a cold case with no leads. But recently, all hands have been pointing to Suge Knight, the founder of the Death Row Records Pac belonged to. Knight is currently serving a 28-year jail term for intentionally running down a man and killing him in 2015. It is as if Knight, being in prison, has encouraged witnesses to come out to testify. According to a report by the New York Post, citing a retired FBI agent who investigated the case for 2 years, Phil Carson, the former federal investigator has identified a man named Amir Muhammad as the man who pulled the trigger in the killing of Biggie. Phil Carson continues by saying the hitman Amir Muhammad, a Nation of Islam convert at the time, got help from some corrupt officers of the LAPD to help with the cover-up of the crime, which remains unsolved to this day. Phil is sure Amir was the one who pulled the trigger, although he says many others helped plan the whole shooting. Suge was said to be the main financier of the operation, although it is not clear how much was paid for the hit. He was said to have kept an accountant on the payroll of Death Row Records, and it was the same accountant helped tidy up the financial side of the whole operation. Suge was said to have ordered the hit because Tupac Shakur, his cash cow, was gunned down, and the hit was to serve as a retaliation. Amir Muhammad, who now goes by the name Harry Billups, surfaced as a suspect in the case, but he would later proclaim his innocence, as he was never even charged by the police. In an interview with the Los Angeles Times in 2000, he maintained his earlier stance, saying he was not a murderer but a mortgage broker whose name came up in the entire scenario. He was made to seem like a mystery assassin committing heinous crimes in the shadows. However, Amir's connection at the time and some other eyewitness testimony cast some doubt on his testimony. Amir Muhammad lives to this very day, and many have said this is because he is being kept safe by the FBI, CIA as an informant. So yeah, that is all we have for you about the truth surrounding Biggie's death. We have other juicy gist coming for you, so you should endeavor to turn on our notifications and be on the lookout for our content. Till the next time.